Reading Weasels in a Box. I am up to chapter 6. These ones are pretty short, so maybe I'll actually get 2 of them done in my black turtleneck sweater. I was in a Alice in Wonderland show today, so I'm dressed very uncharacteristic of me. Anyway, so here we go. Oh, geez, I can't even. These glasses don't help when I'm over there. When I'm here, we are. Let's go. Chapter 6, Book 2. After about 45 minutes of running through the set, you decide you are as ready as you are going to be. Any more rehearsing and you'll be too conscious of playing and you'll forget everything while standing on the stage. The backstage doors open. You reach into the trunk for the guitar amp, but it is gone. The bass player from the Boys from Wyoming carried it in for you while the hardcore band was thrashing on your guitar. That was awfully nice of him. The second you walk into the venue, 2 blonde, anemically pale kids who look like they have never stepped foot out into the hot Texan sun spot you from across the room. They have been standing there in the corner of the room watching the entrances, waiting for you to arrive. Word spreads fast in modern times, especially with the use of the internet. Punk kids, since the early days, have always been reading and letter writing. You had a huge list of pen pals that over time became too long to manage. Stamps were starting to cost a fortune. Now with the internet, pen pals have become instant gossip mongers. They knew you were going to be performing with the Boys from Wyoming before the Boys from Wyoming did. They walk toward you from one side of the room, and you alter your course in order to head straight for them. Maybe you'll pretend you know who they are and treat them like you are their fan. And freak them out. Or perhaps start yelling at them for something they are not responsible for, like a lack of promo posters on the walls, or a crappy sound system, just to see what kind of perplexed reaction this would elicit. At first glance, the kid closest to you seems easily excitable, yet shy and a little frightened. His companion, probably girlfriend, has the most beautiful blue eyes and a sincere, intoxicating smile. The plan to confuse the fans eases off, and the decision is made to just try and act natural. Good luck, John. You're Bedbug, aren't you? His statement takes the form of a question, but he knows well enough that you are indeed Bedbug. It is a piece of dialogue that has become very familiar over the years. Every so often, someone will walk up and just say, "Hello, Bedbug." They offer their hands to shake. You have no idea who they are, and in most cases they have never even seen you in person, nor have they had any real contact with anyone in Semi-Famous. They don't really know you at all, except for gossip and interviews. "I'm so-and-so." But most of the time the small piece of dialogue takes the form of a question. This is because they want to hear you confirm what they already know is a fact. "Yes, that's me." On many of the rare occasions when Franklin Famous does happen to leave his condo, he is often confronted or accosted and asked, "Are you Franklin Famous?" He will respond with a definitive "no," and then just stare at the questioner until they become uncomfortable and walk away bewildered and somewhat miffed. You are much more willing to gab with fans. There is something more extroverted about your character, even though many people have said that your exterior is extremely unapproachable. This perceived unapproachableness is a misinterpretation of your constant need to be active. There is always much business to attend to and not enough time to chat. On the occasional relaxed encounter, you are more than likely stuck deep in thought, which makes you look sad, depressed, or bored. Or so you are told. You are more a voyeur than a musician. I still talk about this today. I think I just had a conversation the other day with someone about this. I think I even wrote it in the article I just did about the Lillingtons. My God, when will I write something new? Recently, a young Asian girl conducting an interview in a bagel shop in Chicago said to you during the pleasant luncheon, "My friend says that the reason you and Franklin Famous have been able to work together for so long is because you are the nicest person in the world, and Franklin is the meanest." This girl was actually Jenny Choi, who ended up in she auditioned for Even in Blackouts, but then she ended up in a band with Ben that didn't last very long. I think, what was it called? Black and Blue, I think it was called. Something like that. She's a great musician, actually. This observation is a magnified simplification, intensified by lack of information, interpreted through a loose-fitted yin and yang assessment of the working of the universe. If there wasn't a J.J. Bedbug, there would be no Mr. Famous. If there was no Mr. Famous, there would be no J.J. Bedbug. This is rather extreme, and in the realm of the supernatural, and only possibly hardly partially truthful, yet it is an interesting theory to contemplate. You are not as nice as you appear, and Mr. Famous is not completely the asshole he is perceived to be. Well, I still think that's true. But this confusion about your identity allows you to be very sarcastic but hardly perceived as being so, which is humorous. It's your own private joke. Your long-term friends know this about you. This characteristic may be a result of an inherent compassion for people and not wanting to hurt anybody, but at the same time, seeing the world as a ridiculous place where meaning is contradicted at every turn. That's sort of a direct influence on me from Albert Camus, the philosopher and existential novel writer. I wrote you a few letters. My name is Shep Hempstein. The Texan fan offers you his hand. You shake it. The shake is as uncomfortable as all other shakes you have experienced. What else is there to do? Yeah, I remember those letters. It is true. He did write you a few letters, and it is true that you actually remember reading them. They didn't say anything too interesting, which is probably why you remember them. His letter writing has been consistent over a long period of time, a sign of someone who is into the music for the long haul, not just a passing phase like it is for a large percentage of the punk population. Most fans sending letters to the band P.O. Box are only one-time writers who say things like, "You fucking rock! When are you fucking gonna tour? I fucking hate that rock and star shit! I hate..." Wait, let me start that over. "You fucking rock! When are you fuckers gonna tour? I fucking hate that rock star shit. P.S. Send me a bunch of free crap. Yours sincerely, the only punk rocker in Nebraska." You'd always thought that rock star shit had more to do with seizing every conceivable opportunity to show oneself in public, in front of as many people as possible, and yet keeping an alienated distance, exuding pomposity, and making millions of dollars in the process. Even that definition sounds inapplicable. Comparative descriptions to shit are always difficult to describe. That sounds like a very Restaurant at the End of the Universe sort of, or the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I think I had read all the novels by then of his. So Douglas Adams, yeah, I'm definitely influenced by Douglas Adams and Kurt Vonnegut and Albert Camus. Not that you just asked that, but there you go. And here we are. Where are we? Here we are. Every letter received is a bipolar experience unto itself. Every confrontation is unforeseen but ultimately predictable. The laborious thing about having a punk rock Don Rickles for a frontman is that you have to endure the encounters with individuals who think they have to insult you in order for them to be acknowledged by you. It's entertaining occasionally, whether the letters are written in crayon, scratched into a piece of carbon paper, pieced together as a collage. I actually got one of those. Or glued letters on top of a picture of a penthouse model spread open wide. Yeah, got that one too. They each have their own unique flair, but the mundaneness of the bulk repetition, opening each letter revealing a familiar world of individualities too easily grouped and categorized, is all so endlessly endless. Semi-Famous does not receive a torrent of fan mail, but 3 or 4 of these correspondences every other day is just too much to digest. All of the rooms in your house are littered with envelopes and packages. Every letter sticks out of its opened envelope. Not one of them has gone unnoticed, but most of them have gone unanswered. It does not seem to matter whether or not you care that the fans have taken the time to write, enduring the increasing sense it takes to send a letter to request a response, to have a one-on-one, avoiding the seventh degree of separation. The increasing amount of mail sprawled around your home causes a guilt that taps you on the back of the neck, but does not crack you open the skull, but does not crack you upon the skull. The guitar only... the guitar... I'm just going to start that part over. The increasing amount of mail sprawled around your home causes a guilt that taps you on the back of the neck, but does not crack you upon the skull. The guilt only lingers subtly amongst a wall of concerns that vibrate between opaque and transparent. Sometimes my writing is just too much. The letters increase. You do not throw them away. They increase. They stack themselves in corners alongside bills and faxes for cell phones. Ooh, this is, what do they call that again? Personification. I'm personifying these objects. That's a very surreal thing to do. The cell phone, soup kitchens, and zine ads. Every letter you write, the letters that form words that add up, that subtract from the creativity of writing, removes a moment of remembrance while they continually tap at the back of your neck. You wake up from a dreamless night on a futon, half covered in blankets, and there's a letter from a kid in Sheboygan tapping on the back of your neck. This letter and others have been tossed into piles that resemble garbage, but the spirit bulges, enhancing the misshaped ceiling and vibrating walls. Even now, when your audience's interest has decreased, well, maybe it has deceased by now, but has decreased, the letters have become outdated, and the kids have moved on, unconcerned, perhaps caring no longer for punk. They still tap incessantly. Your home has become a semi-famous dead letter office. Oh, that's actually a reference to, do you know? I'll give you a moment. Dead letter office. That is from Bartleby, the Scrivener, which is done by Melville. It's a short story by Melville. Great story. If you haven't read it, read it. Your home has become a semi-famous dead letter office. You stand in a corner at all times in your mind with a bag of unanswered mail. The guilt is not acquainted with the negligence. It is usurped by the questioning of your motives, by the selfishness of your own existence. Ah, humanity. Ah, J.J. Bedbug. That's actually a reference to Bartleby, too. Ah, Bartleby. Ah, humanity. Or is it the other way? Ah, humanity. Ah, Bartleby. There it is. Shep is asking questions that he's been working out in his head all day. His interest in stating of questions is more in depth than any interview that you have ever done, and he just wants to know for his own self. You are trying to listen and answer each question to the best of your ability, but you can't seem to keep your eyes off of his girlfriend. It is easy to get away with staring at her because she isn't just someone standing there waiting and bored. She is participating in the questioning. She is as interested in the answers as Shep. This is not very common. From your experience, the punk scene is male-dominated, and the women who do listen to the music don't seem to be interested in trivia. This quite possibly is an erroneous generalization, but it is what you are familiar with, and it is even more so for the boys from Wyoming. Their audience is at least 85% male, and 90% of that 85% is made up of geeks and freaks. I think the scene has actually changed a lot now that it shrunk a lot more. It got really big with Green Day, and I think a lot more women started listening. I also started writing. I think I was more interested in women's subjects here too, because I was starting to work with Liz and even in Blackouts. So anyway, the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Bedbug, semi-famous rock star wants to come across as a gentleman in order to impress the girlfriend and steal her away. See, this is the stuff where I try to be honest with myself about it. I don't feel I was as honest about making myself look like the bad guy in this book as much as I wanted to, but I definitely tried to do it with the sort of ogling of women, because I actually I never slept with anybody on tour, had sex or anything like that, but I like to look at women though. Even though he lives in another state and plans on leaving in the morning, it is obvious that they found each other in this town because there were no others like them. They were brought together by their love of music that had to be searched out, music that is touchable and in the hands of bands that can only become, if they are lucky, semi-famous. And that's interesting, because I wrote this before I met my friends Liz and Craig. Not my Liz, but Liz and Craig from around Philadelphia. They are a couple that followed even the blackouts around for years and years, saw the Mangees, and they are that type of couple where you could tell they were the outcasts in their town, and that they slowly but surely became good friends, traveled a lot, and then they actually fell in love, they got married, and they have 2 kids right now. So that shit does happen in punk rock. It is geek love, and there isn't a love much deeper than the one that allows 2 people to be outcast individuals and not alone in the world. You have no business even contemplating a shallow invasion of lustful intentions. And what makes you think she'd give a damn anyway, you blue-collared rock star? You yell, imagining that I am around, but I'm not. We haven't met yet. That was your mouth. These are your thoughts. Although these thoughts are not acted upon, you do answer Shep's questions, and you do honestly enjoy talking to him, and you enjoy talking to his girlfriend, Carrie. When you walk away, there's a pang in your heart, an empty spot, an unquenchable thirst for female companionship, understanding, and lust. Don't let yourself talk you out of the fact that you are actually a pretty good fellow. Sometimes the line between beauty, lust, and friendship becomes blurred with your feelings for the world in general, as if you wanted to hold the whole world in your arms before it wanders away and leaves you alone. That actually is a reference to Catcher in the Rye. Well, I've references left and right in this chapter. There's no real intention of stealing his girl. It was just a passing thought. It could be that she reminds you of Karen. Karen. Every time you get anywhere near Texas, you are reminded of Karen. Where is she now? Safely tucked in the past, because she is living a separate life, and you are living a separate life. JJ? JJ? We should get back to the club. I gotta take over the merch table for a while. You throw away a third of the onion rings, and the 2 of you step out onto the sidewalk. Across the street, the front of the Middle Eastern cafe sits on the corner with a large window. What? You throw away a third of the onion rings, and the 2 of you step out onto the sidewalk. Across the street, the front of the Middle Eastern cafe sits on the corner with a large window covering one side of the building. A band is in the window, setting up their equipment. See how I did that? I come back to Boston again right near the end there. So that's chapter 6. I think I'm probably going to do another one, but I'll stop this right here for now. This is my apple juice and vodka. What an interesting combination, but the apple juice was all I had. So this is, you get a 2 for today. This is Book 2, Chapter 7. After 500 bottles of beer has been removed from the wall, it doesn't matter who can sing. Everyone, front and back seat, is awake, and all are equally tired, having hardly slept in 3 or 4 days. Driving through Texas is like digging a 6-mile-long irrigation tunnel with a detachable tongue. Your eyes have now been open for 36 consecutive hours, and 15 of those, not consecutive, hours have been spent behind the steering wheel of the obstinate Malibu, ever propelling itself forward. Everyone's voices somewhere along the trip magically become highly trained. The echoes ring out in hilarity. The limited ranges soar, and all can sing beautifully and intelligently, chirping out 4-part harmonies like mechanical birds perched in a suburban mall's holiday winter wonderland. Except right now, in the bowels of Texas, it is 98 degrees, cramped, with no air conditioning, at 3:15 a.m. on some endless interstate highway, Franklin is on his 5th hour in the driver's seat, and you are co-pilot, singing your part and waiting with eyes wide for your turn to drive through the remaining night till morning. Sweat doesn't seem to be an issue anymore. Everyone stinks, and everyone is wet through to their underclothes. There is no contest to see who is the cleanest. All are on equal footing, sweaty, dirty, coated sock footing. It is unbelievable yet true that the 4 most less unknowns, that's the band name of the band now, the 4 most less unknowns, have gotten through a rousing course of 1,000 bottles of beer on the wall. This by no means is literal, only lyrical. No one in the band before this time had been much of a drinker. The band wasn't straight edge, but it was close. Now the members, minus you, drink much more, but couldn't possibly get through 1,000 bottles of beer. Oh, that's funny. I just talked about having a vodka, but actually even up to writing this book, I don't think I hardly ever drank. I didn't start drinking until even in blackouts. Not bad. I mean, we wouldn't actually drink before a show, but we had so much fun together that we would always just stay up all night after the show and drink and dance and have fun. So that's when I started drinking, not till I was like 30, 35? I don't know, something like that. For some reason, this tour has brought out the decadent side of Franklin Famous. It could be his quick allegiance with victuals, inspiring playful drunkenness. Victuals, once again, is not panic. It is vermin. Yeah, victuals, vermin. Yeah. See, I got that confused last time earlier, and I couldn't remember which one was which. Okay, anyway, drunkenness, puking, caution, into the wind. It could be that Mr. Famous's family moved away, and his long-time relationship with the girl you introduced him to has become very rocky. They lasted much longer after that, but then they did get divorced. Trust issues are being questioned, and there's no home to which he can flee for safety. While on the road, this absence only feeds drastic behaviors and decisions. But this band, led by Mr. Famous and you, is even more hyper-responsible while engaged in debauchery and drunkenness. There is still no mixing business and pleasure with senseless danger. No one is ever allowed to drink if there is a drive to be made. It doesn't matter if you are scheduled to drive or not. There is no one allowed in the car or van that has been drinking. And there is absolutely no imbibing of alcohol before going on stage. This was a very good rule. I was all for it. At the last chorus, blurted out in 2 or 3 simultaneous chaotic musical scales, comes to an end, it is instantly replaced by the thin sleeping snores of Muddle and Victuals. In the partial silence, you and Mr. Famous stare out the window, the Malibu's headlights pushing through the darkness and reflecting faintly off the sides of the road. You glance over at him. He is squinting. He moves his head over the steering wheel, closer to the glass. He rubs one eye and then leans back. The last time I ever ran away from home, I made it all the way here to Texas. I don't know why I'm here. No, let me do that again, because I was thinking of there's a chapter that was supposed to be in this book, and I put it to print, this book, and I had forgot it. It's one of my favorite chapters, and I don't know how me and my editor had forgot to include it, but I was just thinking about that. I might describe that in the scrolling end of this YouTube video. Anyway, let me do that again. This is Ben's voice. The last time I ever ran away from home, I made it all the way to Texas. I don't know why I ran here. I guess it just sounded far away at the time. I fucking made it all the way here. He gestures towards the window with an open hand, designating a location that could be out there anywhere. I made it all the way to nowhere. I had no money. There was no place to stay. After a couple days, I just ended up hitchhiking all the way back home. And what did I return home for? I made it all the way back to the suburban Illinois just so I could be packed up, flown out east, and imprisoned in fucking Portland, Maine for 2 years of my life. This, what I think I'm about to read now, is one of my strong memories, too, of Ben telling me this. I think we were actually in Texas when he actually told me all this stuff about him being in Maine. I don't know how much of it I put here. But he was going to write a book about it, and I wish he would have. I don't know if he's still working on it or not. Anyway, it's hard to figure out if that place fucked me up or straightened me out. I want to write a whole book around that place, but I don't think I could even begin to explain what it felt like. I don't fucking understand what happened to me during that time. I'm just fucking happy I made it out alive and with brain still mostly intact. I'm one of the few that has actually made it out of there without resorting to drug abuse and suicide. I've had lots of friends die, bedbug. It's so fucking weird just to be in there. I didn't have a drug problem. I smoked pot. But who didn't? I didn't have a history of suicide attempts. I just ran away a lot and yelled at teachers in school. I engaged my parents in arguments, screaming because I thought I was right about how to lead my own life. And many times I was right. I fucking hated school. I didn't want to be there. I think a lot of this stuff, what I'm reading right now, is just a sort of accumulation of a lot of the things that he had told me over the years, and things that I experienced because I was pretty close to his family during the early years of the band. We used to always be at his house. I learned more on my own. I was fucking miserable. So I ran away again, and then one day, after I came crawling back home from Texas, 2 men in suits came to our house, put me in handcuffs, took me to the airport, flew me to Maine, and stuck me in an institution. That, I think, is pretty much true. That's how he had said, not those exact words, but the sentiment was there. I think his dad might have gone with, too. I'm not sure about that. He talks for about an hour, explaining the absurd things that happened to him, supposedly for his betterment. There were positive experiences like a democracy-run house where the kids had a say in the running of their home. They had counselors that cared, many of whom, at one time or another, were complete fuck-ups themselves, and knew instinctively what many of these troubled kids were going through. They knew who was misunderstood and which ones were crazy and incurable. There's actually a documentary out about this place. I don't remember the name of it. The documentary is pretty fucked up. I don't think it really digs in as well as about the positive stuff. It really seems to be a negative sort of take on it. But Ben would talk to me about the positive and negative, but it was a really fucked up place. So he goes on. We were our own guards and punishers, of course, always with the knowledge that we were all stuck in there beyond our control. If we were caught smoking or stealing, we had to sit in a corner for days with a fucking 2-foot-high dunce cap on our head. Other kids were put in charge of keeping guard, making sure that the dunce doesn't turn away from the empty corner or fall asleep. We had day shifts and night shifts. One time I had to sit there on night duty watching this kid masturbating over and over again into his hand with a dunce cap on his head all fucking night. Humiliation was a mantra there. It was a tactic for curing. They would humiliate us into thinking we were fucking scum, then force rules down our throat in order to make us more congenial in real society. But now life seems to be a fucking circus. We had absurd punishments. If you were caught screwing, you had to wear a sandwich board with a large A on both sides. There's another reference to a book. That's The Scarlet Letter by Nathaniel Hawthorne. Sometimes they would get creative with their punishments. One time a kid knocked over a voting booth they set up for the elections. For the next 2 weeks, they made him dress up like Uncle Sam. The dressing up like Uncle Sam is true. The reason why he had to, I made up this reason, but there was a kid that had to dress up like Uncle Sam. He had to wear a red, white, and blue top hat and a long strap-on white beard. He looked fucking ridiculous. My friend Mary was a complete wreck. She couldn't fit in anywhere, and there wasn't a single drug she hadn't tried. She liked to fuck a lot. Anybody who would take the chance getting caught during sexual intercourse eventually found themselves with Mary. She was always carrying around the large A. It became more of an attraction, an advertisement for her escape mechanism. This might have been Cindy's on methadone. It might have been the same woman. I'm not positive. But pretty sure that was someone that he met in this institution. A hobby turned into a moral beacon. The sign might as well have said, "Fuck me, I don't fucking give a shit." I mostly tried to stay away from being alone with her. I didn't want to end up dressing like the Marquis de Sade with a white powdered wig and a frock coat for weeks only for a fuck. Franklin pauses. She was a handful. Do you still see her? She got out about a year after I did. She overdosed not too much later. She's dead. You both look out the window, Quiet snores rise above the sound of passing fields. Roadside signals and advertisements blur into darkened scenery. You try to think of something to say, something to ask, but before you can come up with the proper words, he begins speaking again. One time I got called into Mr. Fagan's office. He was the man in charge of the whole place. He was one big son of a bitch. He always wore a suit jacket all buttoned and a thin tie. He walked around with his hands in his front pockets. When and if he ever took his hands out of his pocket, you knew somebody was in trouble. I don't know what I did. I probably verbally lambasted a counselor or something. I was always putting up some kind of fight. The president shut the door behind me, smiled calmly, and then fucking went berserk. He picked up a chair and smashed it right in my face, bashing again against his desk, screaming, "I can fucking kill you! You are scum! You are scum!" I laughed. He threw me out of his office. I sat in that corner with the dunce cap on for a month. How funny is that? He couldn't touch me. Maybe he could have. I don't know. Maybe I was lucky. One punishment was crucial punishment to his development. Once a month each kid had to endure a punishment conducted by their own peers. They would be sat in a chair and surrounded by all the people living in their house, the room stifled by 15 to 20 people for a half an hour, yelling at you, insulting you any way they could. There was no holding back from the verbal abuse. There was just no touching allowed. Most people by the end of the half hour would crumple up, crying, having to face all their own insecurities that they had, purposely or accidentally shared with their peers. Their whole fucked up life thrown back in their faces. Franklin said he was a champion at this. I think this is really important, this chapter. I think, a lot of this stuff is very private about Ben, that he might have got angry at me for putting this in the book. But as a writer, I felt like I had to, because I thought it gave a insight into the Ben that that the audience knows, and why he became so good at being so verbally abusive. He was proud that he could bring anybody to tears before anybody else could, and he learned the other side as well. He learned to sit there and take in all the criticism and just smile back, to harden his shell while sharpening his own claws. He learned how to be the center of attention. He learned how to protect himself while surrounded by peers. He learned how to argue, and he learned how to attack when arguments became pointless. He learned how to turn this into a talent on stage. He learned how to protect himself and entertain people simultaneously. As long as it didn't break out into violence, his tongue could lambaste anyone, and he could do it with humor, too, and intellect. There's only a few times in the career of Semi-Famous that this balancing act launched us into potential physical injury. Oh, yeah, this is written way before the thing in Texas happened. I wasn't even in the band then, but let's see how ironically close it comes to that. The band was in a small club in South Carolina. Skinhead stood center stage, zig-heiling the stage. We played a song called "Homosexuals Are Us." That, of course, is "I Want to Be Homosexual." And Mr. Famous and Limburger stripped naked. The skinhead got visibly upset and started yelling, "Fuck all of you homos." And Franklin said, "Come over here, little boy, and I'll fuck you." Now, he actually did say that. The skinhead lashed out at Limburger and smashed him in the face. Why he hit Limburger is a mystery. Perhaps he was afraid to hit the one who actually insulted him. Or perhaps Limburger looked less naked behind his base. There were no security. Limburger is Warren. That's interesting. Limburger, I think, would have been Steve Cheese, but I wonder if I messed that up. I don't know. There were no security guards to protect anyone. Vittles dove over his drums, and you held him back. Perhaps you should have let him beat the hell out of the skinhead, but your motherly instincts wanted to protect the band in a more passive manner. Luckily, the small crowd of fans grabbed the skinhead and dragged him out of the club. He was alone. Where his other skinhead buddies were, you don't know, but... Oh, okay. He was alone. Where his other skinhead buddies were, you don't know. But things would have went down differently if they were around to instigate a brawl. You have never been in a fight in your life. You have stopped a few, but it is in the fabric of your soul to avoid physical violence. I just wrote about this today. And it is hard not to judge those who choose the route of fighting for protection, but there seems to be justice in that approach, too. Mr. Famous really wasn't a fighter. He wouldn't avoid one, but he had a sort of odd moral structure to his lambasting vulgar tongue. It wasn't meant to cause violence, necessarily. It was only the ridiculousness of people's intolerance to indifferences in people that drove him batty. And it was in his character to face these issues with sarcasm and irony, and you think he often confused them himself, by making irrational judgments of friends, assuming that self-protection was always in effect. It's easy to lose oneself when your job is based on magnifying your own inflammatory characteristics. He succeeded. He survived his angry childhood and walked proudly through the decay of his surroundings to the other side. You think his personal wounds are that he is always just a little bit sick and tired of his own perception of the untrusty... Now, let me say that again, because I think this is important. He succeeded. He survived his angry childhood and walked proudly through the decay of his surroundings to the other side. You think his personal wounds are that he is always just a little bit sick and tired of his own perception of the untrustworthy world. That is the end of Chapter 7, Book 2, where I get pretty heavy and introspective for both me and Ben. Thanks very much. That is it.
When they caught this 15-year-old boy, he was put in a rabbit suit and leg shackles.
Why did they put you in chains and in a rabbit suit?
Because I ran away. When they put them on me, they told me that they were going to be on me until I left. It's been 2 weeks so far.
So, addendums. I'm pretty sure, I could be wrong about this, but I think the school that Ben went to is called the Elan School. The Elan. The E has a little slash above it. I forgot what that means. I'm so bad at grammar sometimes. And that was in actually Poland, Maine. It says Elan School is a private, co-educational, controversial residential behavior modification program and therapeutic boarding school. So I'm pretty sure that's where he went. And it's closed now, but there's a documentary about it. Also, I wanted to say the story that didn't go in the book was one of my favorite parts. Yeah, because I'm not going to tell it in the end. I'm kind of getting tired of doing that scrolling ending thing. So, me and Ben were driving all night, like for 2 days straight, all across Texas, and he was. Is that right? He was in the driver's seat. No, I was in the driver's seat. Yeah, that's it. I was in the driver's seat, and I turned to Ben because I was looking out the window and I saw this thing, and I turned to Ben and said, "Ben, do you see a little green man on a bicycle outside this window?" And Ben turned to me and said, "John, I think you need to pull over and stop driving." And the part that I added in the that was supposed to go in the book, but I don't know if it actually really happened, was that a little while later, Ben stopped the car and said, "We have to stop and go to a rest area because I'm seeing your fucking little green man on the side of the road." I don't know if he actually said that, but he did have to stop like another 20 minutes later. And that part, what happens next, is still in the book. But that little section about the little green man on a bicycle, I think got dropped from the book by accident. So thank you. Goodbye.
We are deeply shocked and deeply regretful about the results of last night's broadcast. It came rather as a great surprise to us that a story, the fine H.G. Wells' classic fantasy, the original for so many succeeding comic strips and adventure stories and novels, about a mythical invasion by monsters from the planet Mars, should have had so profound an effect upon radio listeners.
Oh, there is one more thing I forgot. Please, 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 if you can, donate to my Patreon. It also goes for Jughead's Basement, so that's where you can find it. It's Jughead's Basement at Patreon. I don't know if it's .com, but if you go to Patreon and look up Jughead, maybe I'll put in the link below. That helps me a lot because I've been actually committing a lot of time to that podcast recently, trying to bridge out to all different aspects in order to keep content coming, because the band ones take forever. I can only do one every few months on that. Until I get more money, then maybe I can commit to doing one of those a month or more often. Also, you can give a one-time donation if you want, just to me at the at PayPal, just at jugheadsbasement@gmail.com. I don't know, $2, $5, $10, whatever you think these Weasel things are worth. I've only got like 21 people sticking around for these, but to me it doesn't matter. I'm going to finish the book, and I really enjoy doing it. I mean, I'd like more people to be interested in this, but I think you kind of have to be like a super uber fan to really get into these. But if you have friends that you think would enjoy this, please share these episodes with them. All right. Have a good night. Take care of yourself, and see you on Book 2, Chapter 8.